again, we'll get going here. And it looks like, I think we are definitely at critical mass. So we will get going. All right. So good morning, everybody. It's so wonderful to see your faces, and we are now live streaming this meeting. So happy to be with you at our third meeting of the year, the Leadership Council on Early Years. And again, this is the place where we all come together at the nexus of supporting kids and families and really learn from one another, but also make visible the myriad ways that each of our entities is supporting kids, families in community. Because certainly it's not just the work of one agency that happens to be named the Department of Children and Families that does that work. It truly takes all of us, and we will get into that. We will get into that a little bit more in my updates because it has definitely been a busy couple of weeks around updates. So want to thank you all for joining us. We've got a great panel presentation today around sort of how communities are building capacity in that childcare space. This is a meeting where we've actively, for about the last year, avoided conversations specifically about childcare because we feel like childcare has been such a big part of the conversation that we feel like we really wanted to use this space to sort of broaden a conversation beyond childcare about all the ways that we support kids and families. Today, we're turning back into that specific childcare lane. We've got a number of updates. We've got a number of sort of exciting new technology features that we want to share with this group first. And then we have a really nice panel presentation from the middle of our state to really talk about what one community is doing around building out rural childcare capacity. So that's today. I want to be able to go around and do our roll call and see who we are working with. So I'm going to go down the membership list here and see if we have representation. So name, who you're representing. Well, actually, I'll call you by agency, and then as I sort of previewed for folks, one little nugget. Maybe it's a town, maybe it's a place, maybe it's a restaurant that really knocked your socks off in the state of Wisconsin that's been new to you in recent memory. So for me, again, Emily Amundsen, I serve at the Department of Children and Families, and my recent delight was over in Hudson, Wisconsin, eating at a restaurant that was the old post office. Maybe some of you have eaten there. It was, it had a lot of historical old post office stuff all over the walls, and was just a really exceptional dinner and a really charming town. So really enjoyed my time in Hudson recently. And I will go over to the Child Abuse Neglect Prevention Board. I see Rebecca.
Good morning. Yes, Rebecca Murray with the Wisconsin Child Abuse Neglect Prevention Board. I know it's early and I am such a Wisconsinite, but I got the Around Wisconsin Brandy Old Fashioned passport, and haven't really been disappointed driving across the state to find different brandy old fashions.
That sounds like fun. You're the first person I've talked to who has one of those. We will have to talk offline about that. All right. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks for being here. Over to DOA, Kathy Blumenfeld.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for all joining today. I am the Secretary of the Department of Administration, and one of my little nuggets, favorite places to go is Potosi. So in the southwest corner of the state. They have a lovely brewery. They have the National Beer Museum. I think they boast the longest continuous main street in Wisconsin. And there's wineries, gift shops. You can wander over to the Mississippi River. There's usually eagles flying around, and it's just a lovely day trip. So, and great beer and root beer as well. So that's my nugget.
Thank you, Kathy. I knew I could count on you. Perfect. Do we have anybody from DATCP here today? All right, moving on to, I see Secretary Carr from DOC.
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here, and my nugget happens to be the city of Wausau. In early August, I had to go there for a regional community corrections meeting, and I discovered for the first time that their downtown had a lovely park where I got to, and on Wednesdays, they have music in the park, and they have a lot of great restaurants adjacent to the park. And I discovered that their downtown has an awful lot going on, and it was really impressive.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being with us. And thank you for that nugget. We will go over, I believe, Catherine, you're here for DFI today.
Yes, I am. Thank you. I'm the Assistant Deputy Secretary at DFI, and I could go on and on about all the great things in Wisconsin. I just love it here, but I'll just go out my side door. I live on Tiedemann's Pond in Middleton, and just walking around the pond this morning, it made me appreciate living here. So I think if people who are nearby and just want a nice fall color walk to go around the pond. So one of the kettle ponds in Middleton.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I love that. Great day trip idea. All right. I see Jane here from DHS. Are you representing DHS today?
I am. Hi, I'm Jane Wanless. I'm a policy advisor in the Secretary's office, and I'm here on behalf of Sarah Valencia. And I was trying to break down what I would suggest. And I was recently in Paoli. We went to the 7 Acres Dairy, which they have a fabulous restaurant and also an inn. We were just there for the restaurant. They grow all their own veggies and source all the dairy products from their cows. So very good, delicious goodies, including ice cream. And then if you wander over next door, they have the Hop Garden Brewery, and they have a stage, and you can listen to live music, usually if you go on a Friday or Saturday night. And it's not far from Madison if you're in the area. So
I love it. We are making Travel Wisconsin look crazy this morning because we've got such good ideas. Thank you so much, Jane, for being here. Over to Julie at DNR.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Julie Majerus. I'm the Environmental Justice Policy Advisor here in the Secretary's office at DNR. And so, of course, I thought right away of one of our state properties, the Horicon Marsh Wildlife Area. And actually, DNR was there recently. We held one of our meetings there, but my family and I just always enjoy it, especially this time of year. It's just such a calm, beautiful space. And I just was looking it up, and I did not know it's the largest freshwater cattail marsh in the US. So that's pretty cool. And there's a beautiful education center and nature center there too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. And I see Dr. Underly over at DPI.
Thanks so much, Secretary. Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here. Just following along and making a list of all the wonderful places. 7 Acre Dairy, very nice. If you get a chance in this part of the state in Western Wisconsin, visit Paoli. Not Paoli, we're just in there, 7 Acre, Potosi. Potosi, Wisconsin. It's down on kind of on the river on your way to Dubuque. But they have the National Brewery Museum there, and they have a nice restaurant in there as well as incredible exhibits, and you can learn a lot about Wisconsin's brewing history too. And it's beautiful this time of year too, which I think goes unsaid. So thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Jill. Good to see you. We will head over to DOR. I see Secretary Barca.
Good morning. Good to be with you. Thanks so much. And I would say a week ago Tuesday, I was in Williams Bay giving a speech to Visit Lake Geneva, which is their combined chamber, tourism, and economic development group all roped into one. And we were at a place called Pier 290, which is right on Lake Geneva, just absolutely gorgeous. So fantastic. And if you don't mind, Emily, I thought I'd take just 30 seconds to introduce Carrie Reddington, who's going to start to join, primarily represent us, although I'm going to try and be on as much as I can because I really find these calls so beneficial and worthwhile. And Carrie is our division administrator for research and policy, and her team have been doing just some tremendous work on research and compiling data around childcare and the importance and the impact. And I've been using a lot of that data as I've been going around the state speaking to various business and chamber groups. So if it's okay, I'd like to quick introduce her, Emily.
Please. Yeah. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Carrie, you want to jump on? She was just in the far north, so she probably was a great place up there.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you all. As Peter mentioned, this is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about, it's really, it's an issue for families. It's also an issue for the economic development of the state. So it's near and dear to our heart at DOR. Let me see for it. So I have to, if we're looking for favorite places in Wisconsin, I have to go back to my hometown. So I'm from the Driftless area, and I would very much recommend Vernon County. The Great River Road is a beautiful fall drive. You have the Hillsboro Brewing Company, which is a new establishment in Hillsboro, and then Driftless Cafe in Viroqua. So those are my hometown recommendations.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much, Carrie. Nice to have you join us. And we will head over to DOT. I think Kathy is on from DOT.
Hey guys, Kathy Belak, budget advisor, secretary's office. I was thinking about this one, so I'm going to go with 2 because it's kind of a toss-up. I love Devil's Lake, especially in the fall, but in the summer, you can pretty much find me living at Wingra. They've got so many different events, music, Friday nights, different family activities, and just being able to rent out paddlecraft. It's my favorite.
Yes, I did not make it to Wingra this year, and I really regret it. Thanks, Kathy, for being here. We have Joey here from DVA.
Morning, everybody. Joey Hoey. I'm the Assistant Deputy Secretary at DVA. My recommendation is a little town called Corny or Cornucopia. It's on the southern shores of Lake Superior. You may have heard of it because it's the Sea Caves entryway in the winter, but it's also a great place in the summer.
All right. I love it. Gosh, you guys are good today. Do we have anybody from DWD with us today? All right, we will circle back around to DWD a little later. Office of Children's Mental Health, Linda.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Linda Hall, Director of the Office of Children's Mental Health. Good to be with you all again today. My place that I liked so much last year, I went back again this year, was Kohler André State Park. And the boardwalk into the marsh, I think, is just fascinating. I love that. And then this year I discovered the other walk that goes up over the dunes, and it feels like you're on the seashore on the East Coast instead of in Wisconsin. So that's cool. And if you don't want to cook by the fire, there's the Three Sheeps Brewery in Sheboygan, which is a quick hop over.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Linda. We are going over to WEDC. I know Missy is on, but she's also fielding a second phone call right now. But I also see Tracy. Tracy, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Tracy Luber with WEDC. I'm one of the regional directors for Southeastern Wisconsin. And I'm going to pick a local. I live in Milwaukee, so Lakeshore State Park, right by Discovery World. We used to call it the Summerfest Island. This big pile of rocks. It's absolutely stunning and gets tons of people out walking, running, just hanging out. So it's beautiful.
Wow, cool recommendation. I love that. All right, wonderful. And WIDA, I see Elmer Moore here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to follow Tracy's lead, and actually, I'm going to break the rule a little bit and offer 2 places. So I live in Milwaukee, and I think it's always important to shout out Havenwood State Forest, an incredible, beautiful respite from an urban environment that is literally within blocks of affordable housing. So it's an incredible place. It's the most densely wooded neighborhood in the city of Milwaukee. If you haven't been there, go there. The second place I'm going to shout out is the Bad River Reservation, which is sort of right next to Washburn. I was able to take a ride on the Bad River and enter into sort of the mouth of Lake Superior. And it was the most beautiful thing I have seen since I moved to Wisconsin. It was literally jaw-droppingly beautiful. So if you ever have a chance to go there, I highly recommend it.
Wow, thank you so much. I love all of our recommendations. It's got me excited. I have a number of recommendations now that were not known to me that I'm going to look up. Thank you so much. Did I miss any agency, or did anybody jump on that needs to introduce themselves? All right, great. Well, then we will get into it. I want to start today with some updates. And of course, I am in profoundly good spirits today because I am still celebrating the governor's announcement last week for the additional $170 million in emergency funds to support childcare counts through June of 2025. And I have to say, the governor's childcare counts investment is truly an example of connecting the dots in practice. This was not DCF. This was the entire enterprise working together to identify unallocated resources that could be leveraged in new and different ways to fund this shared priority. And back when we first started the Leadership Council on Early Years, our intent, our sort of founding intent, was to create a table where the executive branch and sister agencies could come together on behalf of the young children and families we serve, and identify ways that we could break down barriers and silos across our agency in service to the governor's vision of what's best for kids is what's best for our state. Because all of you believe in this work, and because all of you understand and have come to really understand the pivotal role of childcare, not only just to kids and families, but also to our workforce and Wisconsin's economy, your agencies helped us find the funds to make this extension possible. It's fitting that this enterprise-wide solution is what will keep childcare providers afloat. So for all of you leaders across the administration and the executive branch, you've been keeping this critical issue alive for as long as we've worked together. And together, this table exemplifies how state government can work together on an issue whose oversight or appropriation might lie within one agency, but whose impact touches us all. So I'm just very grateful to all of you for your willingness to do that work, for your leaning in really truly understanding this issue and how it impacts communities. And I want to just impart and reflect the gratitude that we've been receiving from folks all across the state of Wisconsin for this surprise announcement from last week. It truly was the right move at the right time. And while it is, of course, far from what we need in childcare to truly solve through what is a really complicated and long-standing issue in that sector, it is a temporary solution, and these funds will provide an important bridge to the next budget, helping to keep childcare afloat while we live to fight another day, or maybe it's live to compromise another day, and find people who really want to work to fund this long term. It's important for us to recognize what these funds are and what they're not. So this was $170 million. Please recall the ask from the governor's executive budget was $340 million. And so this is, while this is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and will help us extend this program through the budget season of 2025. As one provider from Rice Lake put it in a story that ran over the weekend, this money is kind of like a parachute that is strapped on your back when you are halfway between the airplane and the earth. This is a quote that I thought was quite apt. People are really grappling with this feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is going to help, stem the bleed. But there is still a profound sense that this is not enough. So while we celebrate this investment, and we're so grateful for the families and the providers that have a little bit more time on the horizon to keep doors open, to keep staff employed, to keep tuition in check, these funds are still at the end of the day temporary. And it's half of what we asked for in the budget, but it's all that we have. It's all that the governor has, and he was able to really marshal those resources. It will keep people from drowning, but frankly, just above the waterline. As this governor has acknowledged, it is a one-time investment of emergency funds. It's not a long-term solution. And as we edge closer to the next biennial budget, we're going to be facing the same risks: program closures, tuition increases, lack of access to affordable quality care that will, again, ripple throughout our economy. Some will offer ideas. Right now, there's a slate of deregulation bills that are working their way through the legislature that will feel like choices to an industry that is ailing, but they're not choices. It's not a choice when you feel like you're in that position of just above the waterline. These deregulation bills have intended, I believe they are intended to be a distraction, and that they have been pretty divisive in the field. But ultimately, efforts to deregulate childcare are not usually good for kids. It's a false choice, and we have the potential to do long-term harm through some of the bills that are floating right now. So I believe we will expect more proposals like this to continue to surface. I was, however, excited and continue to be excited to hear about efforts to keep this conversation floating, alive, deepening across all of our sectors. Just this week, I know WEDC hosted a conference on economic development, where I understand there was a lot of attention focused on childcare, and really delighted to hear about that, and to hear that so many folks were having that conversation. I think with 18 to 20 months left of runway before the next budget, we have an opportunity across all of our agencies to continue to keep this issue front and center, an issue about funding childcare. We have, like many of you often tell me you do, we have to continue those person-to-person conversations about childcare, and really expanding the table, or expanding the way that we talk about childcare, to really grow kind of the unlikely conversations that can spring up. And just this story came to me secondhand, but one of my colleagues got a text from somebody who said, "Oh, I'm at a roads conference today, a road builder conference, and the governor joined us, and he spoke for maybe 10 minutes, and I think he used probably the bulk of those minutes to talk about childcare." And this person was really struck at the fact that the audience there convened for a road builder conference was really getting directly from the governor, the hard sell on why everyone in the room should be really tapped into this childcare conversation. So I love that. I love that it's our governor who's been out there probably in more childcare centers than I have over the last couple of months, really making sure that people understand this issue. But it's also those other unlikely spaces and places where I feel like we all have an opportunity to connect that dot. And so, taking my cue from the governor on this one, my ask to all of you is, find that right conference, that right convening, to share one or two of the talking points, and we can certainly follow up with some talking points on this investment. But I think it's important for us to carry the message that yes, we did find some funding to extend this program. No, it's not enough. And yes, we need to keep talking and thinking and solving through and finding those solutions that will help to support this industry long term. So asking you to help me do that. Today, for the bulk of our meeting, we are going to continue the conversation about childcare. We will have a division administrator for early care and education, Priya Bhatia, who will join us with some of our colleagues to share some emerging data with you about childcare counts and answer any questions that you might have in that space. We also have a new data set that we're working to sort of bring together and make visible and public for everybody. And as I mentioned, we're going to test drive that data set for you today to sort of get a fresh eyes take and to help us understand what you're making of the data that we're sharing. Then we would like to bring you a rural perspective of what these conversations are looking like on the ground. We invited some friends from the Mauston Dream Up cohort to meet with us and share some of their experiences tackling the child care crisis outstate. Before we transition into those discussions, we will take a break in the middle of the meeting because we want to start the panel on time. We've got a number of folks that have a couple of other commitments. So even if we run a little early, we will take a little break to make sure that we hit that time perfectly. But I wanted to set a little bit of time aside for us to invite any agencies who may be wanting to share any bright spots, any good news, any bad news, any advances in the budget that are sort of note or at the nexus of kids and families. And so just to make that easy, I'm going to just go through my agency list one more time. You could say no new updates if you don't have anything that you want to share, but I want to make sure to give folks the time to be able to say anything of note, again, in that 0 to 5 space, anything budget related or any good news relative to your touch to kids and families. So again, we'll run through the list quickly, and either you have an update or you'll just say no new updates and pass, and I'll keep the list going. So we'll start with Rebecca.
Perfect. This one's easier to start with than the trying to find your favorite Wisconsin place. So updates is we received an extra $1 million in this last budget, which was great. Much like Secretary Amundsen was saying, we asked for more, but we take it as a huge win because our agency hasn't had a budget increase in about 12 years. So part of that went out to family resource centers, and we finished an accreditation process for family resource centers. So we have 5 of the first group getting an FRC of quality, which is a new process to know that when any family walks in those doors or contacts them, they are welcomed. There's programming for them, and there is also concrete supports to help out with them. So that was a big win. And then the other part of the money that we received through the budget was for expanding positive parenting program, PPP, and we just closed that procurement. And this was to expand it, so to get to new places. And we received 9 applications, and 6 of them were brand new agencies to us completely. So we'll be, after our quarterly board meeting, being able to announce that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's awesome news. All right, over to Kathy. At
Great, thank you,
DOA.
everyone.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, there's a couple Kathys here. Anyway, we continue to, through our Decker division, continue to help our most vulnerable families. And so as the winter, fall turns to winter, we're really focused right now on making sure that families in need have energy assistance and heating, electric, utilities, and still working with rental assistance and help for homeowners for our most vulnerable participants. And then the bridge to connecting the federal funds and keep supporting all the money we've deployed to help families and communities. That work continues on. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. Over to Kevin, DOC.
Thanks, Emily. No new updates from DOC.
Okay, thank you. Catherine over at DFI. Oh, Catherine, you're on mute. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry, that was silly after all this time to still do that. We've got a couple issues, but the big one is that this month we have a promotion going on with EdVest. When you open a new account, the TIA Craft, our vendor for that, puts in $50 to jumpstart the program. So that's kind of what we're doing for young families right now.
Oh, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. We might have to reach out.
Yeah, we sent a press release out and I'll forward it to the group if that's okay, just so people are aware of it.
That's
it runs
great.
through the end of the month. Thanks.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. Over to Jane, DHS.
Hi, Sarah did not leave me with any updates, so I'm going to say I'm going to pass and I'll be more prepared next time. Yes.
No worries. Thanks, Jane. Julie.
Yeah, so I'll just share that we were really excited to announce, along with Governor Evers this week, that more than $402 million has been allocated for financial assistance through the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program to 106 municipalities to improve drinking water quality. A lot of that was enhanced funding through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So those programs getting a boost. And this is so critical because this is going to help fund projects such as lead line replacement, which is a critical issue for child mental health and physical health. And of course, also for addressing emerging contaminants such as PFAS. And we've already seen a couple of preschools in Wisconsin affected by PFAS. So we're excited for that. I'll also share that we're currently in the year-long development process for putting together our 5-year statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. And part of that development process is putting together an external advisory committee. And we're really grateful to have both DCF and DHS represented on that committee for the first time, along with partners in the Milwaukee area, Central Wisconsin, other partners representing marginalized groups, Indigenous voices. Again, this is something unprecedented for the DNR to have this perspective on the committee. So we'll be looking at what really motivates families to get out into the outdoors, and importantly, what are the challenges that are facing certain communities and families and children in accessing green spaces and outdoor recreation. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. And I just want to, again, connect to that and just say, like, the fact that Julie represents DNR on this group made us so excited when we got the ask to join the group that you just referenced. And so just that sort of faith that, like, this is going to be a family focused, endeavor is just it's a very cool, it's something that I can see very visibly from my role running this group, to be able to make that connection to DNR. So kudos to that. Awesome. Okay, over to Jill at DPI.
All right, thank you so much, Secretary. We are very close to embarking on our statewide visits for our strategic plan listening sessions. So we have many questions about children and families and early childhood education in our planning process. So looking forward to getting all that feedback. And then I just wanted to mention that we are still hearing a lot from educators and administrators that childcare is a major issue for them staying in the workforce. And so we continue to highlight that work to address that issue, and certainly are looking forward to working across all our agencies to find solutions to advocate for each other.
All right, thank you so much, State Superintendent. All right, we will go over to Secretary Barca or Carrie.
Two things I bring up. One involves the earned income tax credit. Representative Steffens has a bill to change the name of that, which I have a high regard for him. We've worked very closely with him. We think he's way off base on this because there already is a child care credit, and the earned income tax credit is well known nationally. And we're worried that it may cause some confusion. People may, by changing the earned income tax credit to the earned income child care credit, that people may only claim one and not the other. And so I know the League of Women Voters has come out opposed to it, as is Wisconsin Institute, a CPA, for that very reason. So, I know that it did pass a committee in the assembly. It potentially could come up for the full House, but I wanted to make you aware of that because I do think that it really could be a problem in terms of people claiming everything that they're qualified for. One thing that we've been doing that we'll do again at the end of this year is we've been sending out letters to everybody that potentially could qualify for the earned income tax credit, but if not claimed it. And we know that that is paid results because we've done it 3 years in a row, and every year we send out less letters, meaning people are taking advantage of that. So it's something that we think is very important. The second thing, which I guess it's somewhat of a long shot, but as you know, one of the most important things that happened in the budget is the governor had made it his top priority for to increase share revenue. And finally, after really virtually 20 years of not getting any increase, every community now is getting an increase. And actually, in the future, it'll be tied to sales tax, or 1/5 of the sales tax will go up as well. But another provision in there, which thanks to meetings like this, it makes me think about it, is that there's an innovation fund where if communities combine with other units of government to provide services in a more cost-effective manner, that they can get extra funds. And there's actually planning funds too. Now I know some communities, Wausau stands out the most, is doing a lot around childcare, but I'm going to bring it up to our team to take a look to see if there's any way we could make sure the definition is broad enough so that for those that are dealing with childcare, that if they want to interact with some other unit, that perhaps they could qualify. So I don't want to get everybody's hopes up and give you false hope, but you never know. You never know unless you at least explore it. And so we're going to take a look at that, and we'll keep you posted if in fact we think there's a way we could weave that into there. So thank you very much. And Carrie may have another item or two she wants to bring up. I'm not sure.
Looks like she's saying, nope, you got it. You got it, Secretary.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. And I love that you're willing to kind of make your thinking visible to this group. That's really awesome. So appreciate that. We will go over to Kathy at DOT. Any updates?
Sorry, mute button. I don't believe so. I think generally the usual working on projects, figuring out the safest thing for families. Can we do some bike ped features in there? Of course, safe routes to schools.
All right. Thanks so much, Kathy. Over to Joey at DVA.
Yeah, we just finished one round of grants, mental health grants, in keeping with the governor's year of mental health, and we'll be announcing, I think, 3 more grants later this year for mental health. So that's what we're up to.
All right. Thank you so much. Checking in. Did we get anybody from DWD? All right. Over to Office of Children's Mental Health.
We didn't get any money, and we didn't get any money for school mental health, but we are very pleased to be working with DCF around mental health consultation for the early years. And our role in that is to bring in people with lived experience, parents, and also providers. And so we're really enjoying that collaboration with your team, Secretary Amundson.
All right. Thank you so much, Linda. Appreciate that. We will go over to WEDC. Tracy, I'm not sure if, I think Missy might still be indisposed. So.
And I would just share, like you mentioned, Emily, we had our economic summit Monday and Tuesday this week up in Appleton, and we did have one specific just focused on childcare. It was on like quality counts. So we had Dr. Depesh Navasaria. He did a video presentation on brain development and kind of set the stage from a developmental perspective. We also had Daria Hall from DCF. So she brought kind of a policy, talked about Dream Up and Partner Up. And then we had Mari K. Naboski from the Northern Wisconsin Workforce Board that's done a ton around childcare up there. So she shared some information on the Quest funding. But I think one of the great things that came out of it was really, there were a couple points made. One was that for every dollar in early childhood education, it returns $4 to $9. So there's really, a great impact. The other thing was really talking about our young children as infrastructure, which sounds odd, but this is our future workforce and everything we can do in terms of quality from that, birth to 3, birth to 5, really that birth to 3. But it's so important because, again, there was a lot to dig into there, but really just having that relational connection and that support and the kind of focus on why it matters so much and how that really translates into the workforce of the future. There was a whole other lot that was discussed, but we had over 400 people there. So a lot were all economic development people from around the state. So I think it was a really good platform and a lot of great information sharing. The other quick thing, we had a company, Specialty Cheese Company, which is in Dodge County, and the president talked about he has donated land next to his manufacturing plant, which has about 300 people. They're building a child care center there. He's going to provide health insurance through his company. It was a really cool model. And I love the case studies that were shared because, again, it helps people that attended kind of hear what, especially to hear a private sector, involvement. It's not just a child care center for his company, which was the coolest part. So I'll stop there, but it was really a great conversation. And I think really impactful.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I would have loved to be there. Secretary Hughes was texting me photos of the panel, trying to make me feel bad. So it was, I think, a success, and I'm so glad that you were able to feature it. Again, it's about growing those unlikely allies in this conversation, and certainly folks who think all day, every day about economic development in communities are a group that is vitally important to this conversation long term. So thanks, Tracy. And over to Elmer over at WIDA.
It's always a trick to find the mute button. Good morning. So at WIDA, we do very little that is nominally or that lists children as an intended beneficiary. But truthfully, everything that we do has extraordinary consequences for young people. We know that one of the major issues for workforce is housing, and obviously access to reasonable and effective childcare. So childcare has been a really fun insertion into all of my speeches, that unless we figure out both a housing and a childcare plan, which requires extraordinary resources, we're not really going to get where we're trying to go. The most notable thing to mention is the workforce bill package, which included a $50 million fund deployed to homeowners, able to make very important renovations and updates. The governor used his magic veto to allow us to administer that program as forgivable loans, which allows us to give money to the folks who can least afford to borrow money to update their homes. These dollars are going to have great impact for lead and asbestos abatement, as well as making a house warmer, drier, and more comfortable. The last thing I'll mention is it's been interesting for me personally to have conversations with the childcare workers at my own daycare provider who are having issues affording places to live. And so the relationship between affordable housing or just housing and childcare goes beyond the children, even though they're their most important part. So we are happily doing our best to be great partners to you, Emily, and your agency, even if we aren't doing so in a banner way.
I love it. Elmer, you make visible, like every time you talk of why you're such a perfect person for this role, it's finding those connections where they're not readily visible, but they're there very deeply. And so really appreciate you surfacing that. And I think this is quickly becoming my favorite part of our meetings. We always have great meetings. We always have awesome guests that come in and chat with us. but it's really the updates and the way to hear each of you talk about the programs that you administer through that lens is so helpful to me personally in thinking about how I can connect the dots when I'm out with folks. And so I took a lot of notes during those updates. We'll of course share notes back with you on everything that was mentioned because it is helpful when we can surface this for the communities that we work with. So appreciative to all of you. Thank you very much for those updates. We are going to move now into our next part of the agenda. I want to introduce Priya Bhatia and Jason Bierbauer from our team at DCF. As I mentioned, we have a near complete dashboard and some sort of late breaking data that we'd like to share with you this morning. And what we're asking you to do is just sort of absorb, react, and then I'm going to ask for just any wonderings or any, this is sort of an opportunity for us to get some real-time feedback before we actually make this dashboard kind of front-facing. So really expedient use of the group this morning. So I'll pass it over to you, Priya.
Thank you, Secretary. So, with the increased spotlight on childcare and an interest from folks across all different sorts of sectors, really wanting to dig into the issue, there's definitely been a real hunger for more data. And recently we've had a step down in our childcare counts payments. As we were winding down our childcare specific ARPA dollars, the childcare counts payments stepped down by about 50%. And we're so grateful that we're not facing the imminent end of childcare counts, that it has been extended for another 20 months. But we know that we need to continue to share data to tell the story of what's happening in the childcare field as we make the case for a long-term sustained state investment. So with that context, one of the things that we've been working on is a dashboard that is still very much in development mode, but we wanted to give you all a sneak peek and get your feedback, as the Secretary said. Want to know, do these data pieces, does it resonate for you? Do you have questions or wonderings after looking at it? And so we're going to start with that dashboard, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about other pieces of data that we're working to pull together. So I've got Jason here, who is our IT pro, who's pulling up the dashboard. Thank you, Jason. So this is intended to be an external facing dashboard available to anyone who wants to dig in more about the landscape of childcare across the state. So when you go to the dashboard, you land on a map of Wisconsin with all of our counties, and there's some data in the lower right-hand corner, which is statewide data on our numbers of providers. And you see the different types of providers we have. Certified family, licensed family, those are those in-home, usually care providers, as well as licensed group, licensed day camps, and then public school operated programs. So you see the provider types down there. You can see the numbers of active providers across the state. And then you see regulated capacity for children. And just a note that regulated capacity is really the number of children that these programs are allowed to serve under state regulation. It does not necessarily reflect the number of children actually cared for. In fact, the number of children actually cared for is often lower than the max capacity. And we'll talk more about that. And then this data is for the month of September. And so in this month, it'll show you how many new providers we had enter into regulation and how many providers closed. So one of the questions we're getting is, with the step down in childcare counts funding, are we seeing more providers close? And right now we're still at about net neutral, but this dashboard will give us a way to easily monitor that and share those numbers going forward. In the upper right-hand corner, we have ways that we can sort of dissect the data. So you can narrow down the map by county, tribal nation, by districts, Senate, and Assembly. We often get questions from legislators about what's happening in their area. And then by licensing region, which we have the state broken up into 5 licensing regions. And so that's a map of our licensing regions. So you can dissect by different geographic types. And I just want to show you an example of what it might look like. So if we go to Outagamie County, let's just pick a county, and you hover, you can see the number of active providers, and this is September 2023, 101 active providers in Outagamie County. There were no new providers in September that entered, and 1 provider closed. You can see the regulated capacity, 5,857 licensed slots. And then you can see breakdown by the types of providers. You can see a total of 34 family providers, 4 that are certified by the county and 30 that are licensed. And then a large number of group providers, which creates most of the childcare capacity in Outagamie County, right? So you're seeing there's about 260 slots that are in home settings and nearly 5,000 slots that are in group settings. So that's an example of the information you can find when you hover over your sort of geographic area that you're interested in. Another way to look at this is to dig in deeper into that geographic area and see what trends there are over time. So Jason is going to click there. Yep. So you can click on childcare availability and trends. Now, up top, again, we're in Outagamie County. And if you go all the way to the right-hand side on top, you can see that we have a time frame there, and it extends back 10 years. So you can extend the data back to 2013 and see some longer term trends in your desired geographic area. And one of the things that we're seeing in counties like Outagamie is a real decline in the number of family providers, while group providers are holding a little more steady. Okay, here we have over the last 10 years, from January 2013 till now, the number of providers. And you see back in 2013, we had, if you look at the top line graph, about 160 providers. And it has dipped, glitch. Okay, there we go, 160 providers. And it has dipped closer to about 105 or so. Let's see what that number looks like. So when you hover up, 101 providers. So you can really see the decline over the last 10 years in number of providers. You can also see in the line graph below that, the regulated capacity for children. And so you can see how that has declined somewhat from a little over 6,000 to about 5,900. Now, you might be asking, with the decline in providers being pretty significant, how has capacity from 2013 to now stayed somewhat similar? It is lower. And that is because we are seeing a decline in the number of family providers. And so we're seeing fewer providers, in particular in our rural areas. One of the reasons that's so critical, as I think we've all talked about, is family providers tend to be less expensive, more flexible in the numbers of hours that they're able to provide sort of more tailored care for children. It's just a different type of environment that many parents look for, and there's far fewer of those available. Jason, are you able to filter down to just family providers to see that decline? So we'll give it a moment. As you can see, we're still sort of in testing mode, and it takes a bit to load. But you can see here the dramatic decline, and this is filtered just by family providers. Looks like it's across the state right now, but you can see the dramatic decline in family providers in the top line. One other thing I'll show you is by region. You could look at the Northeast region of the state and see the decline. So if we exit out of Outagamie County and we go right into the Northeast region of the state, yep. And if we look at the trends over time, from 2013 to now, you can see that the number of childcare providers in the Northeast has declined from 500 to about 200 providers. A couple other notes, the second line graph is regulated capacity. So how many slots are there in those providers? And the bottom two charts are new providers in blue and closed providers in red, to kind of give you a sense of the churn that we're seeing in providers. And then the final bar graph is a net. So are we net every month losing or gaining providers? The red obviously being loss and the blue being we're gaining providers. So just wanted to give you this brief demo and want to take a moment to see if you have feedback or questions, wonderings about this dashboard as we continue to fine tune it and make it publicly available. Jason, you want to stop screen sharing for a moment and we'll take a look at folks and see if folks have any questions. This is a great suggestion, Karen. It would be interesting to overlay these declines with declines in population. We know that we have an aging population, and that's a really interesting thought. Thank you, Karen. Any other feedback? Go ahead, Secretary.
I wanted to just make visible and give you an opportunity to talk about one thing that you mentioned. So one of the things that we hear a lot about is the fact that when we talk about the max capacity of, whatever the, whether it's a district or county or whatever, that's oftentimes and increasingly so a very inaccurate picture of what's actually happening. And that's because, frankly, you drive out to any child care center in the state right now, and usually they've got a closed classroom because they cannot find staff to staff that classroom. Is there anything that we're able to do or anything is on the horizon for collecting that type of info? That has been a data point that's been difficult for us to get our arms around.
Yes, so that's a really important point, and it frankly has been a gap in our data collection so far. Right now, we don't have a good way of knowing how many of those license slots are actually available. We hear anecdotally all the time that there are closed classrooms because of teacher shortages. So one way we're working on tackling this is doing a survey. We're going to embed it in our Child Care Counts application in early 2024. so that childcare providers who are filling out their application have an opportunity to share some of that data. And so we'll be asking questions about how staffing challenges are impacting families' ability to access care. So asking things like, you know, do you have a closed classroom? Are you caring for fewer children than you would if you were fully staffed? In other instances, there may not be closed classrooms, but there are shortened hours of operation. So increasingly we hear providers are closed for a day a week. So parents are scrambling to fill in that extra day of care, or they're making their pickup time earlier because they can't staff till 6 or 7 in the evening, which is tough for folks who have evening work. So we are going to be doing a survey embedded in our Child Care Counts application to try and fill that data gap and paint a fuller picture of access to care.
Thanks, Priya. It looks like maybe Elmer, maybe Jill Underly have a question, or that was just a hand. Okay, sorry, Jill. Elmer, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Thanks. First of all, this is extremely impressive, and I'm a little bit jealous. You guys are light years ahead of our data plan, which is in progress. But we are thinking about this as a way to advance action that aligns with our strategic plan. So I'm wondering what considerations you've made to position this data to make things happen, right? So I love getting this very clear understanding. And our something that comes to mind is there a way that you can, let's say, make this usable for someone thinking about opening a childcare facility, to find like an opportunity area, or someone looking to take advantage of these extraordinary job openings around the state, but want to know before they get there, are there going to be places, I just want to make sure that it's easy to read this and see a lot of, frankly, scary things. But I want to make sure that this gets people moving in the ways that we understand are going to be most advantageous to our future.
Yeah, Elmer, thank you. Your head is sort of spinning in the exact same direction that mine does. So there's two things here, right? Like, we have data at our fingertips, and we do, and no poaching Jason Bierbauer from, it's frankly, it's a bad move. I'm already realizing, to put Jason on camera with his name and his face on the screen, because now everybody's gonna want to contact him. But all kidding aside, the fact that we do have just like super smart, awesome people like Jason who are able to take ideas that we have and sort of put them in these visual maps, we know there's other data that could potentially make a super interesting, broader than DCF. So thinking, about sort of like the health and wellness of communities across the state of Wisconsin from a family-centered perspective. When you start to think about K-12 and housing and transportation sort of mapped on, you start to see something that could be really powerful, I think, from an advocacy perspective, or from just a making our data public perspective. Both the good and the tough out there in Wisconsin. And so that's one thing. So if you are looking at this data set going, gosh, what would it look like to overlay this over the top of? We would love to hear from you. We would love to sort of have that whiteboard conversation with you. So that's sort of thing one. Thing two, we had some, when the governor had his special session bill out there, the kind of omnibus bill, we started to have some emerging conversations with a couple of agencies that had pieces of that special session bill to start to think about what would it look like to cut some one-pagers that did, not in flexible terms, but more in sort of a static term, bring some different data elements together to tell a story about different communities. And, that's something that I think would be really helpful to your point, Elmer, about like perspective business entrepreneurs who are interested in exploring childcare. We just talked to a really interesting person over in Dane County about just how he did that he had a map on the table and he was looking at transportation routes and he was looking at school district enrollment and he was looking at the plans for building communities, you know, out in more rural Dane County. And those were all considerations that he made in purchasing land and developing a center. And so it was a real business-oriented approach to opening a center. So often that's not the conversation, right? The conversation is like, well, there's a property available up the road. It could be used for childcare, you know, and that's sort of how the conversation starts. It would be, I think, powerful to sort of put this information in the hands of folks who could use this to make really planful business decisions. So I love that line of thinking too, Elmer. Thank you.
I just have to ask, or not ask, I just have to assert the obvious, which is co-locating housing with childcare is a difference maker of a level that is just so consequential. I'll just point to the new building in Madison called the Andre, which, you know, has a on-site childcare. There's just, yeah. So I look forward to us talking. Jason, can you text me your phone number, please?
Nope. All right, I love it. Anybody else before we take a little break? Okay, great. If you wake up in the night and you've got an idea, you know where to find me. Please don't be shy. We'd love to have more data conversations. And I think that we are hoping to make this dashboard available relatively quickly. We will send a note out to the council when it is published live, and happy to talk more if you have a group that might benefit from a quick demo. All right, with that, I think we're running just a little bit behind, but that's okay. I'd like to take about, let's go for a 6-minute break. How does that sound? So we will come back at 10:15 and we will introduce the panel at that time. So thanks everybody. And thank you again to Jason and Priya for joining us this morning.
Hi, Linda.
Hello,
How are you today?
I am doing okay. Oh, you made it back.
I did. Very quickly. That was a nice thing. That was nice and quick, Tamara.
Yes, the timing's working out beautifully because this panel is a little bit behind our agenda.
Yeah,
That's
we're
all
on
right.
we're on a 5-minute break. Right now, we're coming back at 10:15, and then we'll go ahead and introduce everybody. So,
Perfect.
yep. So we've got just a couple minutes left.
Sounds like it's perfect. Oh, no.
All right, folks. I would like to welcome everybody back and appreciate if council members could just keep their cameras off so we can keep the panel on the screen. I think that'll help everybody sort of keep the screen tidy. So I want to, by way of introduction to the panel, just say that we've talked several times at recent meetings about DCF's Dream Up initiative, which is really we've run 3 rounds of this program. It's intended to be sort of a capacity building, supply building strategy in communities across Wisconsin. When communities apply for this, we partner with an entity called First Children's Finance, who helps us bring together groups of folks that are the right people at the table to be able to dig in, understand their local context, and then try to map to those solutions that may make a difference in their local community. And I have to say, some of my my very favorite meetings that I've been able to attend in different parts of the state have been in relation to this Dream Up process. It's just been really inspiring. I get to meet and talk with people from across all kinds of different sectors who are all coming to the table to really solve through childcare issues. So one of my favorite conversations of late was over in the Mauston, sort of greater Juneau County area, where I met with these fine women and talked a little bit more with them about both the issues that they were facing in Mauston and greater Juneau County, and then also some of the solutions. So I want to, I guess, start by introducing Linda Olenick, who works over at the Mauston School District. And then Linda, if you could just sort of introduce yourself and then pass kind of around the circle, we can introduce everybody and then we'll get into it.
Sure. I'm Linda Olenick, and I work at the Mauston School District. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning here. And so I've been in this community for about 10 years. Tamaya.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Tamaya Lowy, and I'm the Executive Director at Juneau County Economic Development. And I've been in that role for just about 10 years. I have Shar next.
Hi, my name is Shar Weibel. I'm the director at St. Paul's Little Lambs Child Care Center in Mauston. We have been open for about 5.5 years here in Mauston, and I've been a transplant to the community for about 6 years.
Dawn, I see you next.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Buchholz. I'm the director of Juneau County Department of Human Services. I've been in this position for going on 5 years now, and prior to that, I was the director in Waushara County Human Services, and prior to that, the Children, Youth, and Family Services Manager. So been in the field with county government for over 20 years. And I will pass it on over to Amy Board.
Hi, I'm Amy Board. I'm the Juneau County Child Support Manager. I've been working for Juneau County for 14 years, born and raised in Mauston, so I've lived here my whole life. But more importantly, today I'm here representing the Juneau County Ad Hoc Committee, which is an employee advocacy committee, and where we explore what our peers' wishes are for the county and how we can make things better for them.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for those introductions, and thank you so much for making time. I know it's busy over there today. So just the ability to be with us for a little bit is really powerful. Thank you so much. I want to get started today because probably like me, many of the folks on the call may not have had the pleasure of being in Mauston or in Juneau County. So could you talk maybe Tamaya and Dawn just a little bit about what are the aspects of this community, the community context, you know, what does it look like and feel like to live and work in this community through an employment lens, childcare, resources, all of that. Just help us paint the picture.
Sure. I can get started with maybe broad strokes and then we'll turn it right over to Dawn. Juneau County, we are a small rural county, about 27,000 and approximately an hour, maybe hour and 15 minutes northwest of Madison, and just a little bit north of the Wisconsin Dells. And we are very much a child care desert. So we have 17 regulated providers in the county, totaling 627 child care slots, but we're actually close to twice the standard definition for child care desert, where there's 6 to 7 children per available child care slot. So obviously there's a lot of kind of family, in-law, all kinds of creative things going on to make sure that those kids are served and okay, but it's certainly not the standard of care that we want for our next generation of leaders going forward. And then the Mauston School District region is who applied for and was awarded the Dream Up grant in this third cohort. We did have another city in a cohort 1, but Mauston School District serves 3 zip codes, 10 different townships. There's 1 village, and then the city of Mauston, which is also the county seat. Our top industry here is government services is number 1, a lot of medical and healthcare. And we also have quite a bit of production and manufacture. Just in what we've heard from some of those industry sectors through this process, the ways they're trying to deal with the childcare shortage is, shifting their positions to more part-time, less full-time, and sometimes adjusting production shifts. And right now, countywide, we have, 633 total kiddos that are in that 0 to 5 age range who have working parents in the workforce. Of that 633, we only have 156 slots, regulated slots. So that leaves us 477 slots short. And I know Dawn can speak really well to the ramifications.
Yeah, thank you, Tamaya, for that. I guess the things I would add is we only have 2 certified childcare, family childcare providers here in Juneau County. When I started, it was 1, and we creeped our way up to number 2. The Parenting Place out of La Crosse is the agency we work with, and that while they're a wonderful agency, that does create some issues for us in the sense that they are an hour away from us. And so doing those outreach services, you know, to try to really build our childcare capacity has been challenging. Just other things I would add about Juneau County, we do have a pretty significant drug issue, I would say, that kind of lends itself into all things human services, that we provide treatment and those kind of things to try to address that and work with our public health department on prevention as well. We are a very poor county. Depending on the indicator, we're always one of the poorest counties in the state. But in one thing that I just kind of wanted to mention about how poor, in 2020, our per capita personal income was 2nd lowest in the whole state of Wisconsin. So that just gives some indication of what we're talking about here in Juneau County. We were 2nd in that poverty indicator, only to Menominee County. So we have some struggles that we're working with. I really appreciated the comments earlier today regarding the correlation between housing and childcare and working, how all those tie in, and how it's very difficult to address any one of them in a box because it doesn't work. We know all those things tie in for social determinants of health. So we definitely, regarding the housing issue, not only a lack of housing, a lack of affordable housing, but also a very poor quality, often poor quality, run down, older housing units that when we get involved with human services, say in the child welfare, and that we're struggling to address all those situations at once. We know the barriers, of course, and the correlation, I should say, between child poverty and child welfare. And we know that how those two link together in order to, and how we have to work on all of them in order to keep our children safe and stable and doing well. So, and then I'd also add to that, of course, transportation. We're a very rural county. That always ties in as well. And really getting our folks to where they need to go, including kids to childcare and people to work and to treatment and all the things that we're trying to provide to them. So recently, our public health department did a big community health assessment, which every public health department around the state does. And surprising to no one, our top 3 things, the biggest needs and biggest challenges for Juneau County was good job, strong economy, housing, affordable and high quality or good quality housing, and raising that in Juneau County, and then 3rd, transportation. So we're going to talk a little bit, I think Tamaya's going to talk a little bit later in our presentation about the community action teams that were developed around those and how she and her team were really able to connect, especially with the good job, strong economy one.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that gives us a really strong sense of sort of where you're starting from. I just want to invite either Linda or Shar to just add to sort of the picture. I know we talked about a lot of the challenges in Mauston and Juneau County more broadly, but there are also some bright spots, and I think the past referendum in the school district might qualify as a bright spot. So Linda, do you want to talk just a little bit about that in terms of what were the assets in your quiver when you started this conversation?
So this community, even though it's a poor community, is very supportive of education. And in 2020, during the pandemic, we passed a referendum here in Mauston to do a number of things, to address a number of issues that the schools were having. And one of those was a very aging elementary school that needed a lot of work. And, you know, sometimes buildings get to the point where it's better to build new. And so that we were at that point. And also we had been working a lot with our high school principal, especially Jim Dillon, working with our community partners around what are the needs of the community. And part of that was a determination that we needed to expand our technical education aspects of our high school, what we could offer. When our high school was built 20 some years ago, there wasn't as big of a focus on those jobs, but in our community, our manufacturers and other trades building need employees. They have jobs to give, but they needed training. And so one of the items that was part of our referendum was to add a new tech ed center to our high school. And in doing that, one of the things that really came up as part of the discussion was not only did they need us to help graduate students who could go into the workforce, into the welding jobs and the other jobs that are readily available here, but that in speaking with those manufacturers and business people, they were talking about how childcare was impacting their ability to hire. So back in 2022, in the spring of 2022, we were actually wrote a DWD grant that we were not successful in obtaining, but that was one of the aspects where we were really learning that the businesses themselves were struggling with hiring people, with attracting people, with running their shifts due to the limited amount of childcare that was available in the community. So that was one of the aspects, things that were happening here. I guess another thing that was really happening here during the pandemic, when we shut our doors, our families really struggled with what was going to happen to with their children. With the limited childcare available, we had suddenly a number of people who needed to go to work, but had nowhere for their school age children to go. This was something new, kind of a new wrinkle in the community. Thanks to some visionary thinking and connections that a former employee, Carrie Buss, had. She was very instrumental in our district. She knew some places in Madison where children were coming into schools for childcare. And so we set out to license our school buildings to operate childcare during the summer of 2020, so that if we could not open in the fall, we could at least help the community by having childcare for school-age children available within our buildings. The learning would still happen remotely, but it would have given us the opportunity to have a place for children to go, which is what we were really hearing was a big need in our community. But so that's how we first kind of got into childcare, was through the pandemic and through the need for care for school-age children. But it really kind of opened our eyes to the broader needs in the community.
Great, thank you so much. And Char, just anything you want to add from the provider perspective about kind of where the landscape has been for the last 5 or 6 years?
So we've been open for 5.5 years and have been pretty full since day one. We always have had quite a long waiting list that's carried through until probably this fall is the shortest waiting list I've ever had. Typically, my waiting list has been about as long as my enrollment. I would say my biggest challenge is finding a workforce. So when I do have staff vacancies to find someone that's qualified has been a challenge. So typically I've been hiring people who are just interested in childcare and getting them the classes that they need and training them to fill the needs that I have for staffing.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. So I want to focus in on the sort of partnership that came together through this Dream Up opportunity, and certainly what was happening, before, and then also sort of how it came together and how do you continue to work together. So maybe start with Dawn on that, and then if anybody wants to jump in from there.
Yeah. So again, from a county perspective, we know how essential childcare is, obviously, not only for our families to get to work and to get to the treatment and other services they need, but also obviously for the child, that consistent, safe, environment, regardless of what else is going on in that child's life. So when we heard about what was going on with the Dream Up grants and all those things, and then connecting that to the community action team, we really called out to Tamaya for her ability to get those two together. So I'm going to pass it over to Tamaya for you to kind of talk about how that linked into that Good Job Strong Economy, Kat.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you might be catching on, we have a great deal of public-private partnerships happening. So a few years back, I was not nearly as familiar with Dawn and her department or our county health department, and now we actually work quite closely and quite regularly, which I think is a benefit to all in the county. But in economic development, we try to really focus on trends. So I know I first heard the word childcare desert at a conference probably 7-8 years ago, and this was coming down the pipeline, and it really was the pandemic shutdowns that brought it to the surface in a really significant way. So it was kind of a perfect storm here in Juneau County with the offering of the Partner Up and Dream Up grants. So that program has been amazing. And within our county, there's been 2 school districts received, and Mauston's the one we're currently working with. And just as Dawn said, we started the community action teams. Now, the primary focus was good jobs and strong economy. And as we just scratched that surface, that started about 2 years ago, 1.5 years. As we just scratched that surface, what came clear really quickly was that what workforce needed was childcare and housing. So we weren't going to make any headway with workforce until we could address those 2 major needs, at least in some ways. So that's the reason that Juneau County Economic Development really came to the table. And boy, I looked left and right, and we tried to pull in partners we invited, I'd say, every single industry cross-section, from man on the street to school districts, to childcare providers, to families, to parents, to health department, to human services, to employers, to our medical profession, to our prison. I mean, we literally pulled in and invited as many as we could to understand their specific needs and try to get some kind of handle on this. I didn't come from a background in childcare, so learning a lot of the language and how the industry moves has been a big piece of that learning. But boy, we're definitely starting to realize some success in the short term in terms of increasing slots, adding new childcare providers, and then also fortifying the existing providers that we have. And I'd say from our initial invitation to sit on teams, both for the Dream Up grant and these community action teams, we still have a really robust team working on each of those. And then there's quite a bit of overlap and liaison between them. And both do have some funding available. So the community action teams in Juneau, our county government allocated just under $2 million of our ARPA funding that we've been able to disseminate within the county to improve these things. They gave it to us to kind of vet and get creative with programs and processes. So that's been just exceptional. And as far as how much went toward childcare, just under 400,000 right now has been approved at the county level out of that almost 2 million to go toward childcare. And in fact, Shar and I were in a finance committee meeting this morning, and she did have another piece of a grant approved. It has one more step before it's official, but that's super, super cool. And shout out to her for putting that through. So yeah, and then between the two Dream Up opportunities and some of the Partner Up recipients, I know that that this program we've been able to spend almost 200,000, so just about 200,000 really coming through you guys in the state to, again, increase slots and fortify our existing providers. So we're super appreciative of these opportunities.
Wow. So I'm hearing like in all of this, and you're probably like going like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that we're having this conversation about all these different funding streams and, you know, the unlikely partners at the table. But I think this is what's so inspiring about this particular story is that, you know, there was a willingness from the community to really solve through this. There were these action teams. And then when the ARPA funding came to the county, it wasn't like it was just sort of dropping from the sky without, you know, it was dropping into a community that was ready to be able to answer the question of how do we spend these dollars? And so I think that's really powerful. And I just have to ask Shar, I mean, is this typical that you're going before the county board to get funding to do things in the community, or is this a relatively novel situation for you?
Oh, this is a novel situation for me. two of these meetings in one day at the same time is more than I usually have.
Well, I mean, and I think that's, you know, I just want to call out that, you know, across the state, there are communities that are using their local or their government or their local government ARPA dollars to really solve through some of these childcare solutions. There aren't many. And so I just want to give credit to Juneau for having that foresight. And that it's really exciting to hear that there is that direct relationship between some of the planning that's going on and the ARPA funded decisions that are being made. I think too, just the idea of braided funding, of using, you know, so already in this conversation, we've talked about state investments, we've talked about county ARPA dollars and pandemic relief money, and then we've talked about a school district referendum that passed that was critical to sort of igniting some of these conversations as well. So really neat. Just want to invite Amy. We haven't heard your voice yet. Anything you want to add to this part of the conversation?
Well, yeah, I will just add, as far as being part of the ad hoc committee, we have heard from so many of our peers that childcare is such an issue. And being a manager, I also know that we have several other managers in DHS that have frustrations with both retaining staff and recruiting staff. And one of their challenges is not having childcare in this area. So when we brought this to the ad hoc committee, I was elected to compose a 2-question survey to send out to all staff of Juneau County, which I did. And so the first question, do you currently need or use childcare? 35 people said yes. And then they were invited to answer a second question, that if childcare were available to Juneau County, would you utilize it? And 31 of those 35 people said yes. So that led us to trying to explore some different avenues on what we can do, or what options we could provide to the Juneau County Board of Directors and see what our options are. So that triggered a conversation with Linda at the school to see, you know, what are you doing? How are you doing it? What are the options? I think ideally we kind of talked about securing some positions within their childcare that they're looking at opening. And Linda was going to check with some other established places that where employers could secure some positions for their employees to use. Additionally, from a more personal note, my kids were born in 2009 and 99 and 04. So by looking at the graph that was previously shown in the first half of the meeting, you can see back then daycare or childcare options were much more plentiful, and I didn't have this kind of issue. Now my oldest daughter is due here in December, and she's struggling. She's contacted several daycares, and nobody has any openings. So I see the struggle personally with her too, with the shortage of childcare options that we have in our county. So I'm anxious to see, what we can do to improve that situation.
Yeah, thanks for connecting those dots and connecting us back to that sort of data trajectory that we saw that is really alarming in a lot of parts of the state. I want to just invite folks, Leadership Council members, to just think about if you have any questions and you want to throw them in the chat, please do so. I've got one or two more questions for the group, and then would welcome any questions via chat from any of our council members. So what would you say are those critical? We talked a little bit at the when we were prepping for the call about the linchpins of success for counties or municipalities or cities that want to sort of start this conversation and really try to leverage the power of community and of brainstorming and of those multiple funding opportunities. What would you say are the critical success features or the best parts of the partnership at this point?
I think I'll jump in here. I mean, I think that it's really been nice to sit down at a table with other people who are interested in the same topic, who are coming from different points of view. We have, I don't think sometimes we operate in our silos. Like, for instance, Shar and I had never really met before this Dream Up grant. And so, but we're both talking about childcare needs in the community, and she's in the business of serving children right now, but she's struggling with employees. And then we heard from employers who came to the table, the hospital, Bruner Manufacturing, and they were coming to the table talking about their needs for childcare and how it's impacting their business. And so, one of the things that we're doing is we're right now working with Western Technical College to bring the classes to our high school to build the workforce capacity in childcare. So we're also going to be we don't currently do youth apprenticeship for childcare, but we're going to be bringing youth apprenticeship for childcare into our high school as well. So we know that, so those are two things that we can do as a school district to help build the capacity of employable people within the industry in our community, because we know we have a lot of people who grew up in this community, love staying here, want to stay here, want to have good jobs here. And actually I found, it's a great place to be. So that's a couple of things that we could do that I don't think we would have ever done. Shar and I had never really had a conversation about the fact that they were struggling to hire people in childcare here in Juneau County. So some of those conversations and just meeting people and building those relationships, I think, has been really beneficial here.
Great. Thanks for that, Linda. Other folks have any takes on that? Critical success features of a successful partnership?
I guess I would, yeah, thank you for that question. And Linda, for your comments. I would add, I just want to give a shout out to our public health department. I think with their vision of, launching like I said, we know every public health department has to do community health assessment. I think what they did so great with that is then develop those teams around those specific issues and then inviting the right players to the table for those community action teams. And then again, of course, to the Juneau County Economic Development Corp, who really has, Tamaya has her hands in all those pots or all those places, and can connect us with the businesses and then the schools, of course. And I think I'd also do a shout out to Mauston School District, who just really kind of thought outside the box, even when they developed their Eagle Care, as Linda was talking about in the beginning, when COVID started, and then now going into the Little Eagles, developing that childcare. So just really some innovative thinkers and people that brought the right people to the table.
Thanks so much. And I want to, sorry, Tamara, did you want to say something else? Okay.
No, I completely support what Dawn had to say.
Okay, great. I wanna I wanna ask Shar, how important do you think it is to have folks actually providing childcare at the table when a community is having these types of conversations? Why do you think your voice has been important to this process?
Well, I hope it has been. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about childcare and what it is and how it does. So what I hope I brought was a little bit of education for those that hadn't worked in this industry before. It is a industry all unique of its own, and it has a lot of challenges that a lot of people don't think about. And so I hope having, it was not only my childcare center, I was not the only childcare director there, but having our voices there, I think is critical for the education piece for those that aren't involved in that and don't really understand the full context of what early care is about and the need for quality in it.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to go off our prepared questions and just drive at something that I know State Superintendent Underly and I have heard a lot. And the reason I want to bring it up is because I heard in Mauston a very different tone. So outstate folks sort of call out the challenges between growing robust early care and education experiences when there are also school districts in the business of providing 4K, and that's a revenue challenge that can sometimes make it more complicated for childcare providers to stay in business. And I would say conversely, what I heard in Juneau when I was there was a real collaborative spirit and a real recognition that when we are facing a doubly dry childcare desert, that we need all hands on deck really in this in solving through this. So I'm just wondering, and Linda, I really appreciated your comments about, like it was this Dream Up opportunity that really brought me to a table where I got to meet folks like Shar and think about this in a little bit broader. I'm wondering, Linda, as the school district does sort of endeavor to get into the early care and education, providing childcare for littles, what are you learning and how are you sort of tapping into that existing childcare community?
Well, I am learning that it is it's not an easy task to open a childcare center. I'll say that. This world has its own set of acronyms. I'm familiar with all the acronyms from DPI in the regular education world, K-12 education world, but this is a whole new venue. So having people we can ask those questions has been really helpful. I know that, I mean, I've been able to reach out to the Parenting Place in La Crosse and get some help with pre-licensing. This is, and then it's just, we really thought this wouldn't be that difficult to do as far as, you know, we're a school district. We had some space in our high school after the renovation that we don't need for high schoolers anymore because they were old computer labs and distance learning spaces, which now we can kind of do from anywhere. So those spaces could be repurposed. And we really looked at, well, we thought it would be a minor renovation to be able to do that, and finding out that it's really quite a major renovation in order to meet codes for infants and toddlers to be in our care in that space. And so that's where, you know, part of this partnership also where the community action team helped to bring funding in to be able to accomplish the renovation and the startup costs that need to happen. So I think the more that can be done to help startups, the better. I mean, it's even, and I, you know, as far as someone starting in childcare business that doesn't know anything about it, there are a lot of resources out there for support. As long as you can take the time and ask the questions, there's a lot of help out there. So that's been really good, both from our local community, but also from the state level as well, as we go down this journey into childcare. I think it's one of the things that the Dream Up process, though, did bring into light a little bit is how difficult it is for all of the childcare centers to be able to make ends meet. Shar, you're competing for employees with McDonald's and Culver's who are paying probably more, right? And so it's a business model that, as I'm looking at it, and I'm used to school finance, so that's a little bit different too, that, you know, it's a very challenging field, I think, to operate in and be able to give quality care and hire quality people and pay them what they deserve. So I think I'm hoping that there are more answers coming down the pipe for that. I think it's a challenge we're all facing.
Yeah, but I think growing the circle of folks who understand that and who understand how potentially something that they might have, an asset that they might have, could aid the landscape. And I think, you know, your sort of aha about space, you had some space. What you need is sort of that expertise and that additional perspective that comes with having done this work, and so to build the kind of table that can sort of unlock some of those streams of conversation has been really powerful to be a fly on the wall for. So I just want to, in our last 2 minutes, anything that you didn't get a chance to highlight this morning that you'd like to make sure that folks on the call know today?
I've got two things real quick, just to follow what Linda had to say and really tie this back to the Dream Up grant. The infusion of cash support has been so valuable right now for the things Linda described, because of the regulation needed. And we understand that grant funding it's not a long-term sustainable fix, but it was enough to kind of push the boulder up the hill. And as we're learning more about this industry, and it doesn't appear that the ends meet very well, because the cost of providing childcare is much greater than what families can afford. So how we can close that gap, and some of the takeaway learning that we may be able to parlay into long-term solutions has to do with the partnerships of childcare providers, like with a school district, for example, or Char's the director of a center that's based in a church, and even nursing homes. Or we're looking at some of those facilities, businesses that may be able to share services, and that might be a longer term solution to how we can bridge that gap. And then I just wanted to share a really fun story quickly, and I know Secretary Munson heard this when she was on our tour here, but we have a childcare provider in Elroy who's had a center called the Children's Cottage. And in about 2018, 2019, she was going to have to close her doors. She had been providing childcare in this center for decades. She's nearly retirement age now, but that was, her professional career. And it was because the flooring, some of the repairs in the addition to her home, the center, became such disrepair, and she didn't have the funding, set aside to be proactive. All the funding went into what she needed to run her business day to day. And looking at that, she thought, well, I can take a job with a Montessori and still work with kiddos, but was going to have to close her doors. And at the time, her son and daughter-in-law had just gotten pregnant, and they said, oh, no way, you're the child care provider in this city, in this territory, and you're not going anywhere. They went out to the community and they rallied 27 families together to do a fundraiser. They sold pizzas. They raised over $4,000 to give to this childcare center. Fix the floor, stay open. You're not going anywhere. And that was enough to, get most of that work done. And I know she was telling me that it was actually the ARPA funding and some of those rescue dollars that came through to industry in 2020 and 2021 that allowed her to actually finish the payoff of that floor space. And she is still open and functioning today. And we're looking at a nonprofit model for that center, as she would like to phase to retirement, but is kind of looking at other community supported ways. But just an amazing, I think, testament to how important this is for families and communities.
Thank you so much, Tamaya. And I think that's a perfect story to end on today. And let's linger on the fact that it was $5,000 in grant funding that was the difference maker for whether she stayed open or closed in that moment. And so when we talk about microgrants, when we talk about forgivable loans, that's the number that was meaningful for her to do what she needed to do. And that's a powerful story. So want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to our members for being here. As always, I learned so much from all of you. Have a wonderful time and try to get around to some of those fabulous Wisconsin locations we surfaced this morning. Take care, everybody. Happy Halloween.